At least your dear little Gwen is with her father now. But that wasn't me, Peter. That was you.
After the passing of Gwen Stacey, a loss he feels partly responsible for due to his attempt to rescue her, Peter Parker, played by Warden Wayne, finds himself trapped in a web of remorse from his past. He's grappling with the profound dilemma of whether it's time to finally let go of the burden that comes with his alter ego. Amidst this emotional struggle, Peter's world takes another turn when he learns about a terminally ill child who has expressed a heartfelt desire to meet the legendary Spider-Man. This revelation forces Peter to engage in deep contemplation, weighing the significance of granting this request and providing solace to the young one during their final days. First and foremost, I'm going to be judging this fan film on its own merits. Spider-Man Lotus has been caught up in a range of controversies. However, I won't go into those issues here, as I've already covered them in a separate video titled The Rise and Fall of Spider-Man Lotus. If you want a grasp of all that stuff, I suggest watching that video instead. While it's true that some problematic individuals were involved, it's important to give the film a fair chance. After all, the majority of the actors, the VFX team, the crew were uninvolved in the controversy, and they deserve better. So right off the bat, the Spider-Man costume looks absolutely fantastic. It looks like something aesthetically right out of a Steve Ditko comic. While it's wrong to compare a fan film to a Hollywood blockbuster, especially like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, Mark Webb's Spider-Man, and the MCU films, I do believe that this costume is on par with those Spider-Man costumes. However, the cinematography kind of ruins that, as anytime the Spider-Man suit is on screen, it's not really as vibrant as it should be. Yes, the CGI shots with the costume in it look fantastic. That model looks absolutely incredible. But when it's a real costume, it's bad. Not the costume itself, but the cinematography. The cinematography as a whole is just very rough. Downright bad in a few parts. For example, there's one scene where Peter Parker is in his apartment and he's drenched in this blue light. And while this could work really well, it just doesn't here. And the reason why is there's nothing to fill in the light. You just kind of get this harsh light on the actor and nothing else. The shot itself is also underexposed, and it doesn't really work because of that. I'm not a DP. I'm not a master of lighting, but it's not hard to have a competent setup where you can actually see what's happening on camera. For the most part, the performances actually aren't that bad. I think with what they're given, the actors are doing their best with the material. The performances are greatly hindered by the direction that they're given. I think in some scenes, the director literally just said, okay, you're sad here. All right, let's roll it, action. Basically, the acting isn't atrocious, but it isn't Oscar-worthy either. The writing is, there's no better way to say this, god-awful. The dialogue makes the MCU dialogue feel like an Aaron Sorkin screenplay by comparison. I understand that Spider-Man is supposed to make quips. I get that, I have no problem with that, but these quips just bring the film to a screeching halt.
Oh no!
What?
What are you wearing?
It's my shocker suit.
Your shocker suit. That's what you're called?
Yeah.
Wow. Did you come up with that yourself? Real clever, buddy.
Way too much time is spent on them. Even when Spider-Man isn't actually on screen and he's just Peter Parker, it still feels so goddamn forced. The whole Fu Manchu joke by Harry just doesn't work, and it goes on for way too long.
What do you think of the Fu Manchu, huh? There's nothing there. It's still growing in. Just give it some time.
He's been growing it out for 2 weeks.
Okay, no, it has not been 2 weeks. It's not been 2 weeks.
Now, Konop takes a bunch of different influences from the comics. The problem is, he doesn't really do much with it. He shows you the iconography, but he doesn't exactly give you a reason to care about it, especially if you don't already care about it from the comics. It's very reliant on the comics, and as a result, it doesn't really stand on its own, which, yes, I get it, it's a fan film, but when it's so far detached from the character of Spider-Man as we know him, that kind of becomes a problem. This feels more like a brooding Batman than anything.
I don't know. God, it was so much easier then. The world wasn't so upside down. I felt like my biggest problem was making it to an 8 o'clock movie.
This does not feel like a love letter to the character. It feels like it's written by someone who doesn't understand him and who hates him. This is just Peter Parker misery porn, which, in my opinion, is such a lazy way of getting people to care about that specific iteration of Spider-Man, so that when he overcomes it in the end, it feels more impactful, when in actuality, it's just lazy writing. Spider-Man Lotus is just too ambitious for its own good. It feels like this is the end of a movie, when in actuality, it's a 2-hour-long movie in and of itself. I kind of get that feeling like when I was watching Return of the King. Bear with me, just give me a second here. You know how there's like 11 different endings? There's the ending where you think it's gonna end with Aragorn becoming king, and then no, they go back to the Shire, and you think it's gonna end there, and then they show Sam where he finally gets with that woman in the tavern that he's wanted to get with. Okay, great, you think it's gonna end there. It still keeps going, and then they end up sailing off into the sea forever, you know, Gandalf and Frodo and Bilbo and, you know, those guys. And then you're just like, is it over yet? Like, I feel like I've been sitting here for like 9 hours just waiting for the conclusion of this story. This felt like that, but drawn out for 2 hours. Every scene feels like it should be the end of the movie, but it isn't. And as a result, it just drags on. Characters are so aimless. They just get stuck in these ruts. And I get that's kind of the point of the movie, but at least make it well written. You don't need a big budget to make the audience feel emotions. And while I'm not discrediting anyone who has seen this and may have felt some emotion, I didn't get anything out of this. It felt very manipulative and forced. And it was like I just couldn't care less about these characters. I don't know how you can take a story about Spider-Man and make it boring. How do you do that? This is a feat in and of itself. Now to get to something more positive, the special effects, specifically the VFX, are fantastic. Oh my gosh, from the trailers I was kind of like, they look a bit too much like Spider-Man PS4, and at first I even thought that's what it was, but they obviously hadn't been refined, because now they look fantastic. Honestly, they carry the entire film. I think without them, this film would be nothing. So kudos to those VFX artists, because wow, the shots of Spider-Man swinging are honestly on par with the Sam Raimi flicks. Probably not a hot take, but I think they even look better than most of the modern MCU stuff. Now that being said, the pacing is also really rough. This feels like it should have been 30 minutes shorter, maybe even 40 to 50 minutes shorter. You really feel the 2-hour runtime. I think that Spider-Man Lotus really would have benefited from having a competent editor who knew when to say, this should be cut, this should be removed entirely because it serves zero purpose to the plot and seems to drag on for way too long. It's very self-indulgent. There's just a lack of chemistry between the actor that plays Peter Parker and the actress that plays Gwen Stacey. You really don't feel like they actually care about each other. And as a result, you don't care when she dies. And Peter spends the whole movie grieving. He's grieving for a character that the audience doesn't care about. So why does it matter? This just feels like a first draft of a screenplay that was written, then never revised. And then they just went, yeah, we got it. Let's go shoot it. I'm gonna get off the writing now, because if I don't, I think we'll be here all day. That is the weakest part of the entire movie. Let's get into something a bit more positive now. The music is also really good. It has hints of Michael Giacchino's work in the MCU Spider-Man trilogy. There's also a little bit of Danny Elfman in there, but other than that, it's kind of its own thing. I honestly love it a lot. Whoever did the music for this, fantastic work. But the music choices, the ones that are not from the score, oof, they do not fit the tone of Spider-Man. This feels like music that would and should never, ever be in a Spider-Man movie. And I mean that in the worst way. It's a terrible tone setter and it feels way too pretentious. Like, come on, man. I love Radiohead as much as the next guy. I even made an entire video essay about them. But exit music for a film does not work in a Spider-Man movie. This film carries a lot of baggage given the controversy, and I think it's almost ironic how a lot of the themes presented in the film correlate with all the behind-the-scenes drama. However, I genuinely believe that if we're willing to engage in sincere and transparent conversations about complex issues like racism, there's a chance for positive progress. I think that we should also consider how we approach addressing these matters, even in cases where individuals have evolved from their past behavior, or they say it's just jokes. I think that it's very important to acknowledge that I don't have the authority to grant forgiveness or make judgments about who should and who shouldn't be forgiven. I'm just some frumpy Midwest schlub on the internet that loves talking about movies and putting my own weird stuff out there. I am not the arbiter of this person is inherently evil. No. If you like this movie, so be it. I don't care. If you hate this movie, great, but don't be holier than thou about it. My take on it is, it's boring. I think if you took Spider-Man out of this movie and this was just a normal release, people would probably just overlook it because it doesn't really stand on its own separate from the character. As a fan film, maybe just watch a VFX reel from the movie and that's about it because that's all you're really gonna get out of it. Everything else, it's just got awful dialogue and it's Peter Parker misery porn. I just really wanted this movie to be good. For the sake of the VFX artists, the costume designers, the composer, all the other actors and crew that were not complete asshats, but after all, it's just my opinion. So I want to know, what do you think? Have you seen it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Let me know down below in the comments. I'm Cole McCormick. You're watching Firewood Media. Stay tuned for more movie reviews. Thank you so much for watching.